welcome back to the Scarlet Faithful podcast. I'm Aaron Brightman and happy to welcome Erik Vesper, our correspondent for the Scarlet Faithful covering Rutgers Wrestling. Wanted to get some updates on the program. Obviously, a busy first month of the season. Erik, thanks so much for being here.
Hey, Aaron, thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Absolutely. And Rutgers had 2 wins over the weekend over Princeton and Buffalo. I know you were at the Princeton match, and it was, a great environment at the rack as always, 5,000 fans. What were some of your takeaways from that match, a 24-9 win for Rutgers over Princeton?
Yeah, this is one of those years where Princeton's a little down. They graduated a lot of guys last year. So going into the match, we were pretty confident that we knew the outcome was going to be. It was kind of who Rutgers was going to throw out there was going to kind of determine it. And it went pretty much according to plan. Like you said, 24-9 win. The bout split was 7-3. The best match, the highlight match of the evening was John Poznansky up at 197. He's ranked number 8, and he took on number 10, Luke Stout. And Luke Stout came out with a takedown in the first 10 seconds of the match, and everybody kind of held their breath for a second. But Paz is very composed, more composed than any 22-year-old probably has the right to be, and just stormed back and ended up taking an 8-4 win with a couple of takedowns, including just a bully one at the buzzer where he basically just shoved the guy over, and it was fantastic. So overall, good match from the boys. Didn't see Yara this weekend, the heavyweight, so I don't think anything's going on. Coach Goodell mentioned that there will be some guys that he holds out here and there just to make sure everybody's rested and healthy as the season goes on, especially as we enter, getting closer to the Big Ten portion of the schedule.
Yeah, and this being Wednesday, Paz was named Big Ten Wrestler of the Week today for that. And that was you're right. You described it perfectly. A bully takedown at the end. I watched the highlights and, obviously last year taking the year off for him. How much do you think that's benefited him? And, I guess how improved does he look to you so far early on in the season?
Yeah, that was the big question. Paz 2 years ago at 184, coming off. So his freshman year, storms onto the scene as an All-American, right? Gets 4th place kind of out of nowhere at nationals, and everybody kind of expected that out of him going forward. So had a little bit of a down year sophomore year. So like you said, he took last year off, and he actually gained a bunch of weight. I don't know if you've ever seen his Instagram stories, but this kid, he throws around weight. I think he was like one of the videos he was deadlifting. It looked like close to 500 pounds actually. So
Wow.
Coach Goodell indicated he got all the way up to like 225 pounds in the offseason. To bring him back down to 197 means he is strong and ready to go. And I think mentally, specifically, that year off really helped him out. He even spoke about how he just enjoys the sport much more now. He isn't worried about weight, for example. He is pretty comfortable where he's at, and he looks fast and strong. I mean, he's already wrestled some guys, and a lot of the guys at 197, it's a weird weight because it's a lot of the in-between guys that aren't big enough to be heavyweights, so they have to cut back down. You got a lot of ego muscle guys at this weight, and Paz is just tossing guys around the mat. So it's really great to see, and I really think he's enjoying himself.
And in terms of a guy that replaced him last year during his year off, Brian Saldano, off to another good start. Is ranked pretty high as well, and obviously had some thrilling matches at nationals last year with those 2 pins. How has he started off the season, and what do you expect from him this year?
Yeah, Brian Soldano, the human whirlwind. He's exciting, man. He's good. He's consistently going to be the most exciting guy, I think, on the banks for a long time. Um, we expect big things out of Brian Soldano, right? I mean, he was probably one of the highest rated recruits Coach Goodell has ever pulled in. 3-time state champ from High Point. Kind of did whatever he wanted at High Point. Was just tossing dudes around for the last 2 years like it was nobody's business. So the thing with Soldano, and Coach Goodell talks about it, is you kind of got to settle down and go back to the basics a little bit. Develop leg attacks. Can't just be falling to your back against a lot of these high-end guys who are going to know how to keep you there. And I think this weekend was a great example of it, where he really stayed focused on just being a little more conservative, and it showed out. I mean, he picked up a big win on Friday night, and got a little chippy at the end. I don't know if you saw that, but he won't be pushed around by anybody. So, and then on Sunday, you got a little of the old Soldano where he almost got himself in a little bit of trouble, but ended up tossing the kid to his back and picking up the fall. So you love both sides of him, and you just hope he can stay consistent with it. And he has some of the most raw talent on the roster, so we expect big things.
So just in terms of, one thing, and obviously you've covered Rutgers Wrestling a lot more than I have over the years, or more greater detail, But the back end, the heavyweights has always been a little bit of an issue just in terms of consistency. With Rutgers having Jackson Turley back, former All-American Saldano, Paz, and then of course Yara as the heavyweight. How confident are you that Rutgers is as good as they've been in quite a while on those back weights?
Yeah, I mean, for the upper weights this year, this has to be the best, at least since I've been covering the team, and probably the most consistent going back to like the Billy Smith eras when he was, dominating a heavyweight for us all those years ago. So, yeah, you said it yourself. We got all Americans in Paz and Turley. Yara has been around a 12 guy, I think twice. He was on a streak a couple years ago and he tore his knee up. So that was a bummer. But and then you got Soldano, like we just talked about, as one of the more talented guys on the team. So yeah, top to bottom, these upper weights should have Rutgers in a good position to close out a lot of matches now. Against Virginia Tech earlier this season, you saw that sometimes nothing's guaranteed, right? It's wrestling. And a lot of times, especially early in the season, rankings don't mean much and you'll see things kind of shake out. But top to bottom, yeah, this is the strongest upper weight and probably the strongest lightweights too that they've had in since I've been covering the team. So this is an exciting year.
Yeah, perfect segue. That was my next question for you. With Dean Peterson, Dylan Charver, and now Mitch Moore, the transfer from Oklahoma. Those guys have all gotten off to good starts as well. Peterson's in the top 10 national rankings. How impressed were you with him? And he had a pretty good performance this past weekend as well.
Dean Peterson is probably my favorite wrestler on the team. The way he makes adjustments both in match and after matches where he takes a loss is just admirable. I always bring up the example from last year against this kid Braxton Brown from Maryland that in the dual meet took Peterson out. I believe it was a major decision. I don't know if it was 8-0 or 9-1, something like that. Then they meet again at Big Tens and Nationals. He takes him out both times. So he makes adjustments really well. He's a very intelligent wrestler, and he's just real slick. He knows multiple positions. He can make attacks from different angles. He doesn't settle for anything, and he can kind of hang with anybody out there because I think he's real strong too. So Peterson is going to be a guy to watch. I expect big things out of him. All-American is probably, I would say our expectations are All-American for him this year. He definitely could do it. I'm excited to see how he matches up once the Big Ten schedule rolls around because that's always going to be the big indicator of where we're at, right? But
Yeah, well,
Peterson, he's ready to go.
and that's always 125 is always a loaded weight class too, both in the Big Ten and nationally.
Yeah, everybody's at 125 outside of Iowa is happy that Spencer Lee has finally moved on for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And Dylan Charver, he had a major decision over the weekend against Princeton. He's obviously had success in the past as well. How much do you think he can build on that going into the new calendar year?
Yeah, and Charver's ranked way lower than I think he deserves. He had a really tight match with Sam Latona of Virginia Tech, who's actually taken some losses. But Latona, as I heard him talk to his coaches, the big thing he said, he couldn't believe how strong Charver was. So Charver's bumping up from 125. And it's always a question anytime somebody moves up. Same thing with Paz. Is he going to be strong enough? Can he hang here? And Charver's shown that he can hang with anybody. I mean, I think he had 6 takedowns in the third period on Friday alone. He leads the team with, I think, 24, 26 takedowns on the season. So he is slick, he's strong, and he's another guy that as the season progresses, I expect to keep climbing up those rankings. And another guy that can make All-American noise. I mean, he already picked up, I think, 2 wins at Nationals last year. He's a guy that's ready to go. So we expect Charver probably is, his ceiling would be All-American this year. But again, you never know. And I'm really excited again to see with him. They're 133 in the Big Ten specifically this year is loaded. So we'll see once the Jesse Mendez from Ohio State's a match that I really like to see him against, see where he really stacks up. But we'll see when we get there.
And at 141, Mitch Moore, the transfer from Oklahoma, is off to a good start, 4-0. He has some experience in nationals as well. What have you seen from him, and what do you think his ceiling is for this season?
So Mitch Moore, before the in the press room before Coach Goodell's post-match press conference on Friday, all the reporters were just speaking about how mean he wrestles. Mitch Moore is always in on somebody's head. He's always squeezing. He's making the guy look like his arm's going to get ripped off his shoulders, and that's because he's a pinner. He loves those cow catchers, cement mixers, throwing them over the top. And you saw that on Sunday. He finally was able to secure a pin, and he just bullied the guy, threw the arm up. It's been a highlight that's been all over Instagram and Twitter, so I'm sure you've seen it at this point. And when speaking to him after the match, he's confident. He says nobody wants to wrestle him because they know what's going to happen if they engage. And, one match later, he shows exactly what he's talking about. So his confidence is high. I'm confident in him. You always like the graduate seniors. He's cutting weight. He knows this is his last hurrah. So I think All-American is a ceiling thing for him this year as well. But don't say that to him, man. He's ready to get a national title. That guy's tough, and he's ready to he's ready to squeeze some more heads, I think, for sure.
Well, and I think a guy like him too, when they head into Big Ten match play, to have a guy with an edge like that they haven't had in the past, I think could really help them once Big Ten's really gets going.
Yeah, he's probably the biggest pinning threat on the team since Eliezer DeLuca left a couple years ago. If you remember him,
Uh-huh.
149 pounder, always tossing dudes to their back, and was probably their biggest pin threat at the time. Mitch Moore is going to be a little stronger than that, and he's going to use those not as slick, but he's going to do the muscle him over. You don't want to square up with me kind of guy. So we like Mitch. Mitch is going to be a fun watch, I think, for the whole season.
And his teammate at Oklahoma, Jacob Butler, at 149, a little bit up and down so far this year, 3-2. Did not wrestle against Princeton. What do you think in terms of his potential for this year?
Yeah, Butler is an interesting one. He kind of stormed onto the scene in the offseason where he took out, see, we wrestled, I believe it was in the U.S. Open trying to make the national team. And he
Yes.
took out the number one seed, Alec Pantaleo from Michigan, pretty handily in the opening bout match, which kind of exploded him onto everybody's radar. Then he transfers to Rutgers. Like you said, he didn't wrestle both matches this weekend. I was told he's banged up. Um, he's also coming down in weight this year. I think he wrestled 157 last year for Oklahoma. He's down at 149. He's a slick wrestler. He's tall. He's lanky. He's kind of the antithesis to Mitch Moore, who's more stocky, more bruising. So Jacob is slick. I don't know. I haven't seen enough of him yet, so we'll see how he does. The Big Ten schedule again is going to be telling. See how he can hang in that grind. I mean, Big 12 wrestling is strong, but it's not the Big Ten. You're not wrestling, a nationally ranked guy. Not even nationally ranked, probably a top 15 guy every weekend. So we'll see how he hangs with that. He's a solid guy at 149 though, and Rutgers is happy to have him. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, and he's an NCAA qualifier as well. So certainly brings plenty of experience. And then at 157, Andrew Clark. What have you seen from him so far?
Andrew Clark was my I always do a sleeper pick, right? So a guy I think that's really going to climb up in the rankings as season goes. And for me, it's Andrew Clark this year. He was banged up to start the season, but he's come out now and he is attacking quick. And that was always a thing for him. Andrew Clark is a solid wrestler, but he would always fall behind in big matches and then have to mount some kind of valiant comeback that sometimes would fall short. And it was always nice to see him in it at the end. But I know Coach Pritzloff has worked with him big time on being that aggressor, getting out there first, getting initial points. And then it's kind of nice. You can still be the aggressor late, but you're not clawing for your life trying to get back into these matches. So he came out with his first match with a big pin in about, I think, 40 seconds. So he's ready to go. I think he's perfect for that weight. He looks filled into it. He looks fast. If his confidence is up there, he has a high ceiling for this year as well.
And Tony White went up a weight class. He's at 165 now. I think the thing with him is, consistency over time. He's shown flashes, but he's struggled at times too. Well, what have you seen from him in an upper weight class now?
So Tony White, definitely he's jumping up from 149 all the way up to 165. It's not something you usually see. Coach Goodell said in the offseason he was walking around at 180 pounds, so he did it the right way. He gained weight, eating healthy, and lifting a lot of weight. He comes from my alma mater, South Plainford High School, so there's a spot in my heart for Anthony White for sure, Tony White. But you're like you said, he needs to be more consistent. It still looks like he might be a little undersized at this weight, and it doesn't really make a lot of sense. But he looked good against Buffalo, so want to see more of that. Really solid defense. Need to see him get to his leg attacks. Need to see him be ready in the beginning of the match to get going. He has a lot of talent. He is another guy that kind of stormed out of nowhere out of high school. He was never nationally ranked very high. Won a state championship his senior year, kind of, I think, surprised a lot of people doing that, and jumped right in. Had a great redshirt freshman campaign. I think he was like 18-3, won redshirt freshman of the year for his weight. So there's expectations there now, and we got to see if he can meet them. There are guys there chomping at the bit for sure. You got Luke Gayer there. I think Connor O'Neill's back down at 165. So there's guys with some experience that want that spot. So it'll be important for him to stay consistent. I wouldn't be surprised if coach sends him to Midlands at the end of this month just to get some more reps at 165 to get more comfortable there. But confidence and being comfortable and consistent, CCC, right? There we go. That's what we're going to need from Anthony White this year.
And a little bit of similarity, but obviously the ceiling with Jackson Turley, that Cinderella run to All-American status a few years ago, and then obviously he's battled some health issues, specifically last year. He's been a little up and down to start this season. What do you think the potential is? Do you think he can get back to that All-American status at the end in March?
I do. Jackson Turley has been an enigma, right, since he came on the banks. Much like Paz, kind of came out of nowhere with that All-American, a little more out of the nowhere because I think Paz was a little more highly recruited. But it grabs I think it was an 8th place finish his true freshman year. And then, like you said, he's been battling injuries. He's been battling consistency. This year, Coach Goodell said he came in the best shape he's ever seen him. That was a thing with Turley over the years, and I think it had to do with the injuries too. He wasn't hitting the ground running as much, but this weekend showed when he's healthy, he can hang, and he's fast. I mean, sometimes surprisingly fast. He gave Mekhi Lewis a tough match. He gave Mekhi Lewis a tough match also last year at Nationals. I think he only lost 4-2. So he can hang with these guys, and him being in late in a match is terrifying for a lot of these wrestlers because he can go to some of this funky stuff and just out of nowhere be on top of them, right? So Turley and I think he also is leading. They put a graphic out today. He's leading the team in back points right now as well. I think he's got about 17 because he has a mean bow and arrow where he grabs the leg up behind him. It looks like the most uncomfortable thing in the world, but he keeps grabbing these back points and just keep climbing, Turley. He's got to keep being consistent, keep climbing. Another guy who I wouldn't be surprised is at Midlands would be him, just to have a bigger imprint going into the Big Ten schedule. So we'll see. Not a lot of backup at 174. I think they got one guy right now, Shane Cartagena-Walsh, who I don't believe has a ton of wrestling experience from what Coach Goodell says, but he's looked pretty good in the time we've seen him. But it's the Turley show. We're going to ride it as far as it can go. And I really do think that ceiling is an All-American finish if he just turns it on. He's the type of wrestler that's a tournament wrestler where you don't want to see him. You don't want to be his draw. And he could just be a bad draw for somebody and make some noise for sure.
Yeah, so just in terms from a team perspective, covering all the weight classes there, last year, as we know, was a little bit of a step back for the program, but still sent 7 guys to nationals. It feels like with everyone ranked right now, the potential for everyone to qualify, all 10 starters qualify for the NCAA tournament. How do you think as a team, they between match play and tournament run, which do you think they're better suited for, I guess, at this point?
Coach Goodell is known to build his dual meet teams, right? Coach Goodell loves dual meets. He loves having a top to bottom strong lineup, like you just said. Not many teams in the country can claim having a wrestler ranked at every weight. I think actually they're at 9 now as of today. I think White finally fell out after losing on Friday. But even with that said, this team is top heavy enough where they can make noise at nationals, right? Having your guys all ranked is nice, but you really don't start scoring points at nationals until you're close to that All-American, right? Top 16, top 12. That's when you really can start benefiting your team and scoring some points to climb up there and get that top 10 finish that's been elusive since the Suriano and National year. With Yaroslav, with Peterson, and Paz specifically, I think those guys can push them to this top 10 finish that they haven't had in a while. And then hopefully you could find another guy like a Turley or something like that that makes noise at nationals. You just got to get there. Like you said, qualifying all 10 would be huge, and they have an opportunity to do it. They haven't done it, I think, since it was about 2016 with Nick Irvina was the last time they did it. But qualifying 10, getting them to the dance is the key. Once you get there, all bets are off. We could see what happens. But Peterson, Paz, and Yara could be the 3 that spearhead a top 10 finish for this team, which would be huge for Coach Goodell, especially because he specifically said last season that he was going to make some moves, which he did, to improve this team because it wasn't satisfactory for him, which you like to see because there's always those rumblings. Rutgers needs to improve more. The things that Coach Goodell have done for this program already is just night and day compared to where it was. That's a lot of people don't remember where Rutgers Wrestling was in the early mid 2000s. I was in high school then. We would go to a Rutgers match at the barn, and we would be the only fans. It would just be us and maybe like a handful of parents and things like that. So the fact that he's consistently getting 5,000 people out to these matches, that he's putting a product out there that people want to see, and they are improving. Things don't happen overnight. They're going to get better. Having Ashton and Suriano be national champions was so huge for this program. And I'm hearing too that Sebastian Rivera is going to be sticking around. He might come back to coaching after his run for the Olympics this year. So all that is huge. All of that is continue building this program, and I'm happy with where they are, and I think they're going to keep improving. And I would not be surprised if you see a top 7, 8 finish this year from them.
I love your optimism, and it really is amazing how far he's taken things, and the fact that they're top 5 in attendance year after year now, and even after last year when it was a down year, towards program standards. Still a ton of a draw at home. This year, coming off of Midlands, they have a pretty challenging schedule. First with Penn on the road, ranked 19th right now, and then kind of an intriguing start in Big Tens, right? Not necessarily as exciting as some fans would like in terms of big name blue blood programs, but you're at Purdue and at Michigan State. After having Indiana at home, all three programs, which are winnable matches for them. Do you think that can help breed some confidence as a team before they have that gauntlet in the Big Ten with so many ranked teams on the schedule?
No, you're absolutely correct, I think, Aaron. This couldn't have kind of shaken out better for them to get their wheels going once that second semester kicks around. Not to take anything away from those programs, but like you said, they aren't the top tier of the Big Ten. Rutgers should start 3-0. There's no really question about that. They have a better program than Purdue right now. Better. Indiana's up and coming. I'm not going to say that Indiana is a very good program. And Michigan State is always kind of going to get the little brother to Michigan in wrestling. Let's be serious. So yeah, that is a very good point. I really think hitting the ground running, getting that 3-0 start, getting the starters to feel what the atmosphere is different when you're on the road and when you're at home on the Big Ten. So to feel that, get that under their belt, as you said, before we get into the Ohio States and the Penn States and all that. And Michigan, I think, is the same weekend as Michigan State, which they just picked up their 5th All-American transfer today. So they're spending their money well. So yeah, that'll be daunting. But yeah, opening it up with 3 wins would be huge, I think.
And just to wrap it up, just in terms of Midlands, I know we don't know yet who's going to be competing. I guess what do you think they can get out of that in terms of that tournament experience? And do you expect most of the starters to participate?
I would expect him to send probably about half the starters. I don't think you'll see like a Poznansky. I don't think any of the graduates. I don't think you'll see. It's going to be a younger guy thing. Maybe I think, like I said, I think White and Turley will go. I'm sure Clark will probably go. But beyond that, I don't expect them to send a huge contingent. Midlands is kind of different than it used to be, right? Iowa stopped going to Midlands, and that's a huge deal. Iowa has their own tournament now at the end of the year, or at the end of the calendar year here, and that's kind of taken away a little bit from the lure of the Midlands. Still a good tournament, still a lot of Big Ten schools there. I think Arizona State is always there. You got your Cal Poly, who Rutgers wrestled earlier this year, so there are still good programs there, and placing at Midlands is important, or I mean, it is a good showing, but at the same time, you can kind of see where the Rutgers program feels about it. The fact that Goodell isn't sending a full contingent there, sending a full team, but still, Midlands is strong. It's a tournament, coming straight out of Christmas, so you got to lose all those Christmas cookies and get right back at it. But yeah, it's a year. I wouldn't be surprised in the future if they send it to maybe a Cliff Keen tournament, because this is kind of surprising that Rutgers isn't participating in at least one of these December tournaments, but there's always a method to the madness, right? And getting some guys out there to get some mat time will still be key.
Erik Vesper, appreciate all your great insight. Our wrestling correspondent for the Scarlet Faithful. We'll have you on several more times throughout the season. It was great talking with you about the program, and certainly a lot of reasons for optimism. And definitely excited to continue to talk to you this year.
Aaron, thank you so much for having me, and go RU.